Hi, and thanks for joining me. Now the weather's been absolute crap for the last week or so. Rain, thunderstorms, typical British summer really. Anyway, the clouds broken up and the sun's out today, so I've pulled Goldie out the garage and we're off out and about round the southwest of Doncaster. We started off just outside Wadsworth and we're heading down into the Don Gorge to a place called Lower Sprotbrough. This is quite a steep descent down through the woods with some pretty tight turns and this hairpin to catch you out if you're not careful. Down at the bottom we go over two bridges. The first one takes us over the River Don, and if you look to the left as we go over you can just see white water where it goes over a weir. The second bridge takes us over a canal section. During the 18th and 19th centuries the River Don was being altered and made navigable for barges, and to get round this bit of the river a short canal was cut with a lock to get boats up the rise. We're just going down this little lane to take a look at the canal cut, and also there's an interesting old building. That's the canal on the left, and the building in front of us is the Boat Inn. This was originally a farmhouse built in the 17th century. It later became an inn and was at one time called the Copley Arms, after the Copley family that were major landholders in the village. It was altered in the 19th century and had a renovation in 1985 following damage from flooding. It's said that Sir Walter Scott once stayed here and wrote part of the novel Ivanhoe while he was here. Today it's a Grade 2 listed building and a very good pub to boot. This is the canal cut and it joins the river just round the bend down there. The River Don's over at the back beyond the trees, out of sight from here. Up beyond the road bridge you can see the lock, and just beyond that the canal joins the River Don again. We're heading up the other side of the Don Gorge now and up to Sprotbrough village. This is an old settlement and it's actually registered in the Domesday Book as Sprotburg. I'm going to stop up here outside the old rectory. This is a Grade 2 listed building and dates from around 1850. Its claim to fame in recent history is that Sir Douglas Bader, the World War II fighter ace, grew up here in the 1920s. His mother married the local vicar after his father died as a result of war wounds that he got in the First World War. Douglas did go to boarding school at Oxford but came home in holidays. There's tales about the mischief he got up to in Sprotbrough. He's supposed to have shot a local woman with an air gun through her bathroom window as she was getting in the bath. He went poaching in the nearby woods. And there's still supposed to be a hole in one of the rectory windows from another airgun pellet fired at his stepfather. But he's famous for his war exploits, of course, and his story was made into the film Reach for the Sky in 1956, when Kenneth Moore played his character. Just outside the old rectory There's the old village water pump, or what's left of it anyway. It was originally on Main Street but was resited here in 1987. We'll move on now up through the village and past the 12th century St Mary's Church. This is a Grade 1 listed building. There's what I think is an old stone mounting block, or carriage stone as they were also known, just outside. They were used for people, particularly women or old people, to mount their horses and carriages. I'm stopping just here because there's another listed building, or monument if you like, across the road, but you'd never know it was here. Blink and you'll miss it. Took me a while to work out just where it was. If you look over the road, hidden in the bottom of the hedge of that house, you'll see a stone. Now that's actually a medieval cross base, and it's a Grade 2 listed monument. It used to be somewhere else in the village, but for whatever reason it was resited into this hedge some time ago. And very strange. Heading up towards High Melton now. In 2019, High Melton hit the headlines when 13 metal detectorists were taken to hospital after eating cakes containing cannabis. They were attending a rally called Coil to the Soil, and someone thought it would be a good idea to secretly bake some space cakes. 8 ambulances and a medical team went to the village. Fortunately, all recovered okay. We're turning off before High Melton to head down to Cadeby. This is an old village dating from medieval times. There's some lovely old buildings here. This is the Church of St John's, built in 1856 in Gothic revival style. It's redundant now, but opens to the public for viewing. We're passing straight through the village to the site of Cadeby Main Colliery. The pit was sunk in 1889 and worked till the coal was exhausted in 1986. Unfortunately, we've now got locked gates, but you used to be able to get onto the top where there's a marker. Like many pits, it suffered a disaster in 1912. It was the 9th of July and the King and Queen had been visiting mining villages in the area, so luckily there were fewer men down the pit than normal. there was an underground explosion that killed 35 men. Rescuers went down, but unfortunately there were several further explosions that killed 53 of the rescue party. The King and Queen went to the pit the following day to offer support. Subsequently, 5 miners were awarded the Edward Medal for gallantry. The final death toll was 91 men, and there are a couple of memorials around the locality. During the 97-year life of the pit, there were 234 fatalities and over 1,000 major injuries. In 1999, the site of the old pit was transformed into the Earth Centre. This was heralded as a museum for the millennium that would encompass the basic elements of earth, fire, water and animal, vegetable and human life. It received £42 million in funding from various sources and covered 400 acres. In 2001, Phase 2 added even more attractions. Unfortunately, by 2003, it became clear that visitor numbers weren't reaching the predicted level and the centre just wasn't viable. It closed in 2004. In 2008 and 2009, the BBC actually used it as a location in their TV series Survivors. The site is now mainly returned to nature, and a part of it's been used to build a housing estate. We've circled round to the south side of the Don Valley now and into the village of Denaby, Maine. This is another pit village and is literally on the opposite side of the river to Cadeby. In fact, later on the two pits joined up underground and eventually all the coal from both pits came up through Cadeby, Maine. Denaby, Maine opened in 1864 and was initially operated by miners who moved in from other areas. In 1899, the village was the subject of an article written by a special commissioner for a publication called The Christian Budget, and he named it in the article the worst village in England. It was also reprinted shortly after in the Mexborough and Swinton Times. The commissioner visited Denaby, Maine, and was horrified by what he found. He describes the village as one where nearly all the men and most of the women devote their high wages to betting, where religion is forgotten, home life is shattered, where immorality and intemperance are rife, where wives are sold like cattle and children are neglected. Altogether a pretty damning indictment. I'll read out just one or two of the things that he actually wrote. I am sitting down to write this article in numb despair, for the mining community I have to describe is so repulsive that many who have never been near it will probably refuse to credit the story. The regular method of living in Denaby is to pay debts on Saturday and get things out of pawn, spend all the remainder of the wages on Saturday night and Sunday and start pawning on Monday morning again. Several stories came to my ears. I quote one as a sample. Joe got tired of his wife and sold her to his lodger for £1. Brought up from babyhood amidst oaths, they learn to swear as they learn to talk. They can pour out the most horrible language with a fluency and abundance that leaves some experienced adults hopelessly behind. Not surprisingly, the article caused outrage in the area. Now, life in Denaby was hard at the time, but the author was guilty of gross exaggeration and completely failing to mention all the good things. It certainly wasn't the worst village in England. Back to more recent times now, and we're just passing the Empire Palace Cinema. Now, this should have opened on November the 3rd, 1913, and over 2,000 people turned up. Unfortunately, there was a problem with the licence and they had to be turned away. It was sorted the next day and the show went ahead. Incidentally, the seating capacity was only 1,200. It showed its first talking picture in 1937, and in 1962 it went the way of many cinemas and converted to bingo. Today it's commercial premises, but still standing and looking proud. We're coming into Conisbrough now with its famous castle, and we'll go up round the hill and take a look. It was built in the 11th century after the Norman conquest of 1066, but by the 16th century it was already in ruins. This is another local place that has a connection with Sir Walter Scott, as he used the location for his novel Ivanhoe, which, as we've already said, he was writing when he stayed at the Boat Inn down in Lower Sprotbrough. By the end of the 19th century, the ruins had become a tourist attraction, and today it's owned and managed jointly by Doncaster Council and English Heritage. Next calls Old Edlington, and this really is an old settlement area which dates back to the last ice age. It's one of only 4 places in the Doncaster area to have such ancient connections. Edlington Wood nearby is the site of a Roman settlement, and that's scheduled as an ancient monument. It's recorded in the Domesday Book as Ellington. This is the Church of St Peter's and dates from the 12th century. In 1962 it was declared redundant and left abandoned. By 1971 it was virtually in ruins, but it was saved and restored thanks to the Redundant Churches Fund. Just down the road from the church there's an unusual memorial. It was thought that a Lancaster bomber had crashed near Edlington in 1943, and a memorial to its crew was placed here. Subsequently, it was discovered that the actual crash site was at a place near York. The air crew memorial was moved to its rightful place, and the one here replaced with one to the 4 local men who lost their lives in the First World War. There's a plaque on the wall explaining the mix-up. At the same site there's also an interesting memorial to a greyhound who saved the life of the Lord of the Manor around 1710. We're going to go back up to the roundabouts now, then we're heading due east. We're a couple of miles south of Doncaster here. last call for this trip is Wadsworth. This is an old village dating back to at least the Norman conquest. It seems to have got its name from the Wordsworth family who lived here. It's been variously referred to over the centuries as Wadswood, Wordsworth, Wadsworth, and now Wadsworth, or as it's pronounced locally, Wadsworth. This variation in names, it really applies to everywhere in the country, because the English language has only become standardised over the last few centuries. Names were often misspelt on official documents. One of the old, more isolated buildings is supposed to be the setting for the book Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, but I can't find out which one. This is Wadsworth Hall, and it sits just on the edge of the village. This is a manor house, and it's a Grade 1 listed building. It was built in 1749 for the Wadsworth family. In recent years it's been a nursing home and offices, but it's currently a private residence. We'll head back out the village now, past the church of St John the Baptist. This was built around the 12th century and was originally called St Mary's. It sits on a hill and the tower can be seen for miles around. In the Second World War it was actually used as a lookout post in the case of invasion. Anyway, that's enough history for one day, so I'm going to wrap it up there and head on home. If you're still with me, hope you've enjoyed this little tour and managed to find at least some of it interesting. Don't forget to leave a like if you have. Drop me a comment, and if you want to watch more of my ramblings, please subscribe to the channel. Hope you can join me again, so cheers for now.